A millionaire widower followed his nanny after work, and what he discovered that night changed everything. The city of Portland glowed beneath Nathan Cooper's office window, a glittering sea of lights and movement 23 floors below. He stood there in silence, hands buried in his pockets, watching life happen without him. At only 31, Nathan had everything his late father used to dream about: a booming investment firm, a penthouse that kissed the skyline, and more money than he'd ever need. But since the accident that took his wife Claire 18 months ago, success had lost its meaning. Every victory at work felt empty. Every quiet evening was a reminder of what he'd lost. The faint streaks of gray in his dark hair weren't from age. They were from grief, from sleepless nights spent trying to be both father and mother to a little girl who barely smiled anymore. Nathan carried himself like a man who refused to fall apart. Neat suit, polished shoes, calm voice, but inside, his world was still in pieces. The only light in that darkness was Sophia Martinez, the nanny who'd somehow brought warmth back into their frozen home. At 26, she wasn't extraordinary by appearance, but there was something about her presence, a quiet kindness that made people feel safe. Emma, his 5-year-old daughter, adored her. Under Sophia's care, Emma laughed again, danced again, asked questions about the stars and butterflies like she used to when Claire was alive. Nathan often found himself watching the two of them, Sophia chasing Emma through the garden, her golden hair tangled with streaks of paint or sand, her laughter filling corners of the house that had once known only silence. She'd been with them 8 months now, and somehow she'd rebuilt what grief had torn down. But tonight, something felt wrong. Earlier that day, Nathan had overheard Sophia on the phone, her voice low, trembling with worry. "I'll figure it out, I promise. I just need more time," she'd whispered urgently. When she noticed him nearby, she ended the call in a heartbeat, her face pale, her smile forced. He tried to shrug it off. Everyone had personal problems, right? But during dinner, she was quieter than usual, distant, distracted, and it gnawed at him long after she tucked Emma into bed. Now, standing by his office window, the city lights reflecting off the glass, Nathan made a decision that even he didn't understand. The man who planned every move, who calculated every risk, was about to do something completely impulsive. When Sophia left the penthouse that night, Nathan grabbed his coat and followed her, carrying her worn brown bag and wearing the pink sweater Emma always said made her look like a fairy princess. Sophia stepped out into the cool Portland evening. Nathan followed her from a distance, hands in his pockets, telling himself it was just concern, nothing more. She worked for him, cared for his daughter, and had become part of their small, fragile family. It was only natural to make sure she was safe. At least, that's what he tried to believe. But somewhere deeper, in the quiet corner of his heart he refused to acknowledge, Nathan knew there was something else driving him. Curiosity, admiration, maybe even something that scared him to name. Sophia boarded a city bus heading away from the glimmering downtown towers he called home. Nathan followed in his car, staying far enough back to remain unseen. The streets grew older, rougher, the kind of neighborhoods he hadn't stepped into in years. The polished glass of luxury condos gave way to weathered brick buildings, small grocery stores, and flickering streetlights. When Sophia finally got off the bus, she walked toward a modest community center tucked between 2 aging apartment blocks. Through the wide glass windows, Nathan saw warm light spilling across the street, painting soft gold on the pavement. He parked nearby, drawn by something he couldn't quite explain, and stepped closer to the window. What he saw inside made him freeze. Sophia stood at the center of a large room surrounded by elderly residents, the kind of people time had forgotten. She was leading them in slow, careful exercises, her voice gentle, her movements full of patience. Nathan watched her steady an old man's trembling hand, guide him as he took small, uncertain steps. Her expression was pure kindness, the same warmth she gave to Emma, but magnified 100 times over. The residents lit up when she spoke to them. Laughter rippled through the room, soft and genuine, as she teased one of them about his fancy dance moves. When the exercise ended, she didn't leave. She stayed to help serve dinner, moving between tables with the grace of someone who truly cared. Nathan watched her sit beside a woman in a wheelchair, cutting her food into small bites, brushing her hair back gently. She listened to stories, laughed at old jokes, and treated each person as if they were family. And as he stood outside, hidden by the evening shadows, the truth began to settle over him. Now he understood why Sophia sometimes came to work with tired eyes, why she always declined his offers for expensive outings, why she wore the same few clothes week after week. She wasn't living a secret life of luxury or hiding trouble. She was giving her time, her heart, her energy, to people who had no one else. Nathan felt something stir in his chest, a mix of guilt, admiration, and awe. He had spent months seeing Sophia as just a caregiver for Emma, but now, through that glowing window, he saw the truth. She wasn't just helping his daughter heal. She was quietly saving other lives too. When Sophia finally stepped out of the community center near 9, her hair loose, her smile soft, Nathan quickly stepped back into the shadows. He didn't want her to see him, not yet. His mind was spinning, his heart racing. By the time he turned back toward his car, one thing was certain. Nothing he thought he knew about Sophia Martinez would ever be the same again. Nathan drove home in silence that night, his thoughts tangled in disbelief and awe. What he'd witnessed refused to leave his mind. The laughter, the compassion, the way Sophia moved through that room like a quiet force of light. Everything he thought he knew about her had changed in a single evening. By morning, he still hadn't found the right words for what he was feeling. When he walked into the kitchen, Sophia was already there, cheerful as ever, flipping pancakes while Emma sat on a stool, chatting about her plans for the day. Sophia's pink sweater caught the morning light, her movements calm and graceful as she braided Emma's hair. The whole scene was so peaceful, so normal, that Nathan almost didn't want to disturb it, but he couldn't let it go. "Sophia," he said finally, accepting the cup of coffee she handed him with her usual thoughtfulness. "Could we talk for a moment? After Emma leaves for school?" Something in his tone made her pause. A flicker of uncertainty crossed her face. "Of course, Mr. Cooper. Is everything all right?" He offered a small smile, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Everything's fine. I just need to understand something." Later that morning, once Emma had been dropped off with hugs and promises of playground adventures, Nathan and Sophia sat in the living room. Sunlight poured through the floor-to-ceiling windows, catching dust motes that danced quietly in the air. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Nathan studied her face, the faint shadows beneath her eyes, the lines of quiet exhaustion that came from giving too much of herself and keeping too little. Finally, he said, "Sophia, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be completely honest with me." Sophia straightened slightly, her fingers knotting together. "All right," Nathan took a breath. "Last night, I followed you after work." Her eyes widened. "You what?" "I saw you," he continued gently, "at the senior center. I saw how you helped those residents, how they lit up when you walked in. I saw what you do when you think no one's watching." Sophia's cheeks flushed crimson. "Mr. Cooper, I can explain. It doesn't interfere with my job, I promise." "I would never let anything—" "Sophia, stop. Nathan interrupted softly. His voice wasn't angry, just steady, full of quiet sincerity. I'm not upset about your work here. I'm worried about you. How long have you been volunteering there? She hesitated, then said in a small voice, 3 years, since I moved to Portland. My grandmother lived in a place like that before she passed. I remember how much it meant to her when people visited. Some of the residents there, they don't have anyone left. They just need someone to notice them, someone to remind them they still matter. Nathan's chest tightened. There was something humbling about her words, about the quiet strength behind them. And you do this every evening after spending the whole day with Emma? Not every evening, she said quickly, clearly embarrassed. Just Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturday afternoons. It's really not a big deal. Nathan let out a soft laugh, not mocking, but filled with admiration. Sophia, it's the biggest deal in the world. She blinked, startled by the warmth in his tone. He stood and walked toward the window, his reflection merging with the bright skyline beyond. When he turned back, there was a look in his eyes that made Sophia straighten instinctively, a quiet seriousness that carried more weight than any words so far. Sophia, he said quietly, do you have any idea what you've just shown me? About kindness, about what it means to truly give to others? Sophia lowered her gaze, unsure how to respond. And for a long moment, the only sound in the room was the distant hum of the city below. Sophia sat up a little straighter, sensing the weight in Nathan's voice. I want to make you an offer, he said, and I need you to hear me out before you say anything. Sophia frowned slightly, unsure what to expect. Nathan took a deep breath, choosing his words carefully. I've been thinking about starting a foundation. Something focused on elder care, on improving the lives of seniors in our community. After what I saw last night, I'm certain of one thing. You're the one who should run it. Sophia's eyes widened. Mr. Cooper, I don't understand. I'm not qualified to run a foundation. I'm just a nanny. Nathan shook his head, his tone gentle but firm. You're not just anything, Sophia. You're someone who sees need and answers it without waiting to be asked. You give love where it's needed most. To a child who isn't yours. To people who have no one left. That's not a resume skill. That's the heart this world is missing. And that's exactly what this foundation needs. For a moment, Sophia was speechless. Her eyes shimmered with disbelief and something like hope. Over the next few weeks, the two of them began working side by side to bring the idea to life. Nathan handled the business side, funding, planning, logistics, while Sophia brought the soul. She had a way of seeing what people truly needed beyond numbers and budgets. And Nathan, who had spent years building walls around his emotions, found himself letting them fall one by one. Sophia, in turn, saw beyond his wealth and power. She saw the man beneath, the widower still grieving, still trying to balance being a good father with being present, still afraid to love again. She watched how tenderly he cared for Emma, how hard he worked to be both parent and protector, and slowly, she began to understand the quiet strength behind his calm exterior. 6 months later, the Cooper Foundation opened its first senior center, a bright, welcoming space filled with laughter, flowers, and life. Nathan stood beside Sophia at the ribbon-cutting ceremony, his arm brushing hers as they watched Emma hand out flowers to the residents. Her little face glowed with pure joy, her laughter echoing through the courtyard. The facility was state-of-the-art, but its heart, its warmth, its humanity came directly from Sophia. It was the same light Nathan had first seen glowing through those community center windows months ago. You know, Nathan said softly, watching Emma help an elderly man plant flowers in the garden. I thought I followed you that night to find out who you really were. But I think I was really following you to find out who I was." Sophia turned to him, her eyes gentle, a smile tugging at her lips. "And what did you learn, Mr. Cooper?" Nathan looked out at his daughter, the child who had once stopped smiling, now glowing with life again. "That love isn't something you lose when tragedy strikes. It's something that grows when you find people worth sharing it with." Sophia smiled, and for a long moment, neither of them spoke. They simply watched as laughter filled the air, Emma playing with the seniors, the sunlight reflecting off the flowers, the world somehow feeling whole again. "You taught me," Nathan said quietly, "that the heart's capacity for love isn't limited by loss. It's expanded by the courage to keep loving anyway." Years later, when people asked Nathan Cooper about the most important business decision of his life, he would smile and tell them about that night, the night he followed his daughter's nanny and discovered that true wealth isn't measured in money or power, but in the lives we touch and the love we choose to give. And Sophia, now his wife, and the mother Emma had once wished for, would always add with a soft laugh, "Sometimes the most important discoveries happen when we stop searching for what we think we need and start noticing what's been right in front of us all along."